here in Kilshannig Church of Ireland, or Protestant Church, in the graveyard in Kilshannig. Now, it's a graveyard actually rather than a cemetery, even though it is signposted as a cemetery. The difference being that when there's a church on site, the graveyard is classed as a graveyard. If there's no church on site, it's classed as a cemetery. It's only a minor technicality, but just to get the record straight. So this was built, there is a record of it being built, or repaired I should say, in the early 1600s after the Desmond Rebellion. And again, it was repaired in 1719 the last time and added on to. So that's what, 200 years ago or more, 1719, yeah. So it's reasonably modern. It was handed over to the Cork County Council, the graveyard and the church, around 1981, and they were looking for what could we do with it, and they decided to make a cross centre out of it. So when you look around, there's different rooms, new stairs, rooms down here, and this area as well. So it was converted into about 7 or 8 different craft shops, and they were doing various bits and pieces, metal work, glass work, all that sort of thing, paintings and things like that. But the problem with it was that you were here in a winter's evening, inside in the middle of a graveyard, and it turned a very enticing place for people to come. And it was isolated from Malatown, it was nearly 3 miles into Malatown. So it didn't take off as such. I mean, they kept it going for about 10 years, but it didn't really work out. So the council are looking for ideas and plans now. Could we do something else with it? So that's the story of the church. There's a number of stained glass windows. You'll see missing one there, and there's some here. There's a stained glass window, 2 stained glass windows belong to this church in St. Maltos's Church in Kinsale. I tracked them back there, and the Newman name is actually on them still. They were donated by the Newman family. And there is another one, at least, in Camp in Kerry, in the Protestant Church in Camp. I've seen neither of them, but they're there anyway, and I've seen pictures of them on the internet and that sort of thing. So that's roughly the sort of the history of the church. So when we do tours here with schools and various other things, and for Heritage Week we've done it a couple of years, we did rubbings of some of the headstones outside, which you can see down on the wall. And is it dry? What's the lashing? We don't know how old that baptismal font is, but I would imagine it is there since the church was renovated and redone in 1719. And one famous person who was actually baptized here was a man by the name of Thomas Russell. And Thomas Russell got involved in the 1798 rebellion with the Young Islanders above in the north of Ireland, Belfast. He actually was a librarian in the library in Belfast. And he was captured anyway and executed sometime around 1802 or 1803 and buried in Downpatrick. And he was known as the man from God knows where, because he seemed to kind of come from they didn't know where. But it was very interesting that you had Thomas Russell, a leader in the 1798 rebellion to get rid of England out of the place. And he lived about less than, I suppose, a half a mile up the road from here. And here you had Colonel Foote on the opposite side, another both of them were Protestant, another man who was head, neck and heels in suppressing the 1798 rebellion and the neighbours. So it was unusual. And he would have been, Thomas Russell, 1760 odd, he would have been baptised here. And I assume that's the baptismal font that was in use then. So just a little bit of story and history again. Okay, we're here at the Lombard tomb, the Lombard burial tomb. There are the Lombards of Lombardstown, who came to Lombardstown in 1620, established an estate there. They built a mansion in 1740, but before that, after the Cromwell confiscations, they acquired 1,500 acres extra of land around the Lombardstown, Glentown, Blackandara, Gotto area. So at that stage they had over 2,000 acres. And I think it was James Lombard in 1683, when he died, he stipulated in his will that he was to be buried in the Lombard tomb in Kilshannig Cemetery, and it was written into his will. So that's the Lombard tomb in Kilshannig Cemetery, so he's there. Now, what's interesting also about that is that his granddaughter, for a long time we thought it was his daughter, but in actual fact, I'm happy enough now that this is his granddaughter, married one of the Nagles of Ballygriffin. And their granddaughter was Nano Nagle. So here we have the great-great-grandfather of Nano Nagle buried here. But then Nano Nagle had a sister, Margaret, who married Curtin, one of the merchant princes in Cork. And when you go down along that line, about 3 generations later or so, one of them married Roach from Trebolgan, who had their major estate in the Trebolgan area. And he became the first Baron Fermoy. Then you're the second Baron Fermoy, and then you're the third Baron Fermoy. So down along the line, you came to one of those Roaches who married Edward Spencer, and they became the parents of Diana Spencer, Princess Diana. So I was over in a convent in England visiting, and I asked them, it was the same convent in Nano Nagle, the Presentation Sisters, and I said to them, just talking about it, when they heard I was from this area, and they were all talking about it, Nano Nagle and all the rest of it, and I said, did you ever hear of any connection with Princess Diana and Nano Nagle? Oh yes, we did. Could you enlighten us? And I said, I can tell you exactly what the connection was, and they knew about it, but they didn't know what the connection was. So they were delighted to get that little bit of historical information, but it was a most unlikely relationship, wasn't it? Princess Diana and Nano Nagle. You'd never think it. But there's the one of the people that actually started off that sort of family history, shall we say. So that's the number 2. Okay? Now the soil, you can see there's almost a footpath there going to the back door. I reckon that style was put up when they moved the glebe house, the presbytery, in there across the way. and that was a quick exit to the thing. But quite a number of Protestant churchyards, and I don't think it applied here, but maybe it did. A Catholic was not allowed to be brought in the main gate. They had to be brought in over a stile. And often there would be a large flat stone there where you could rest the coffin on it for the bearers to get their foot upright again, to get back in. So I don't think that was used, I think it was because of the footpath there. It was used as a shortcut to come in here.
To the glebe.
This man, George Bolster, studied medicine, joined the Royal Navy, and became Deputy Inspector General of the Royal Navy, George Bolster. So he rose up to be a very important person in the Royal Navy in England, and he was one of the Bolsters of Curtin, which would be quite close to Lombard. Here you have another one of the Bolsters, another George Bolster. This guy now I would think is a nephew to this fella, from what I can figure out. But this fella is an important guy as well, because he was one of the fellows, his father was one of the fellows that was appointed by Sir Richard Griffin to do the valuations for the Griffiths valuation of land and property. So his father was involved in that. He himself built Curtin mill, the corn mill. He had a fertilizer factory built there as well, and eventually it was sold to the O'Sullivan family, and they now run a very successful horse training business out of that Curtin estate, basically. So that all these Bolsters are connected. The Bolsters, we think, came into Ireland probably as part of the plantation of Munster after the Desmond Rebellion. And the Protestants that were brought in and given large tracts of land at that stage, when the counties Cork, Kerry, Waterford, those three counties in particular, suffered hugely. They were laid waste by the British afterwards as punishment. And they said you wouldn't hear the bleating of a sheep or the lowing of a calf between Dungarvan and Dingle after when they were finished. They just killed off everything and burned off everything and tried to, I suppose, eliminate the Catholic communities in that stretch of country after the Desmond Rebellion. And the Bolsters, I think, probably got some of that land, and they became known as undertakers because they got the land on condition that they would inform the authorities if there was any subversive activity being planned or going on ahead or anything like that. They were sort of the watchers for the establishment, and they became known as undertakers because they did that undertaking. And this is the original headstone. A member of the family later put up this one in front of it. They employed somebody to move this one and put it here, but they couldn't get a crane in to lift it, and this one was cleaned up and it was left as it was, and they had that concreted and a base put on and all the rest of it, but it didn't materialise. Now, sometime around after the famine, I'd say probably 1870 or thereabouts, two of that Curtin family decided to immigrate to Australia. And they tackled up the Jinnet and trap or cart or whatever, and they went in from Kilpather into the station in Nano to get on the train for Cove or Queenstown as it was known at that time. And the younger brother drove them in and bring home the Ginnet. And they all got very lonesome inside at the station in Nano. And the younger brother decided he was going to Australia too. So in those days, Australia, Ireland were all under British control, so I suppose it was easy enough to get a ticket. And he took off with them and abandoned the Ginnet and the cat inside Nano. And sent word out by somebody or other for the animal to be collected. And he ended up in Australia. And his grandson, John Curtin, got very involved in the labour movement in Australia and eventually became leader of the Labour Party in Australia. And sometime around 1940 or thereabouts, now I'm not sure the exact date, the Labour Party got into power and John Curtin became Prime Minister of Australia. All from these people here, Kilshannig. And I remember meeting an Australian here, and it was a different thing, and I brought him down here and I showed him and I said to him, your former Prime Minister, they're his great-great-grandparents or whatever they were. Oh gee, he said, I must get a photograph. He said, my father, he said, was an ardent admirer of John Curtin, because he said he maintained that that was the man that prevented the invasion of Australia by the Japanese in the Second World War. Whatever he did, I don't know, but this is what he's credited with, and he's revered down in Australia because he kept them out of that war. Whatever he did, we just, as I say, we just don't know. So that's the story of the Curtins. Now, I met Curtins that came back around here about 3 or 4 years ago, and they had their family tree done, and there's more Curtins back in Lockchapel, and they left 2 books about the family tree in Bruna-Corrigan, the kind of heritage place in Lockchapel. And I had it for a bit and just reading through it and all the rest of it. And they were delighted to be able to come back and see exactly where the Curtin family came out of. And the Curtins are still up in Kilshannig. So that's the Curtin family, and I think that's about as much